Good afternoon, everybody. I'd like to welcome you to this afternoon's webinar, where we're going to focus on strategies that some folks have used in the southern part of the country, the South and the Southwest, to transition their fleets to cleaner fuels and vehicles. This session is brought to you by Transportation Energy Partners. Again, I'm Ken Brown with Transportation Energy Partners. Also by the Dallas-Fort Worth Clean Cities and by EarthX. So brief background for those of you who are not familiar with Transportation Energy Partners. We work with and provide policy support and other kinds of assistance to the nation's nearly 90 Clean Cities coalitions and their 15,000 stakeholders. We work to keep coalitions and stakeholders informed of key policies, programs, and funding opportunities. And we educate decision makers about the importance of advancing markets for cleaner fuels and vehicles. Many of you just attended our annual Energy Independence Summit in Washington, D.C., which we thank you for participating and hope you found it valuable. And if you didn't make it this year, we strongly encourage you to make it next February in Washington, D.C. It's a great event. Today's presenters, you're going to hear from Karen Flagg with EarthX, who I'm going to introduce in a moment, Nancy Long from Dallas-Fort Worth Clean Cities, Frank Granados from the Medical and Fire District in Rio Rico, Arizona, Marcela Porro, the Director of Food Service and Transportation for the Amphitheater Public School District in Tucson, Arizona, and Mike Sullivan, who's the Director of Fleet Management and Maintenance with Central Freight Lines, and he's based in Fort Worth, Texas. So we got a great program for you today. I first want to start off by thanking EarthX, which you're going to hear a little bit about from Karen. They are sponsoring today's webinar and an upcoming workshop in Dallas, which I'm going to tell you all a little bit more about. But we very much thank EarthX for their support, and we strongly encourage everybody to go to EarthX in Dallas over the 25th through the 28th of April. It's a great event, and I'm going to now introduce Karen Flagg from EarthX, who's going to tell you a little bit more about the event. So thanks again, Karen, for being with us and for sponsoring today's webinar.
Well, thank you, Ken. Good afternoon, everyone. Just a little bit about EarthX. We focus on environmental education and awareness. We host an expo which has over 700 exhibitors focused on the environment and sustainability. We have a green speaker series. We have 2 stages with close to 400 speakers over the 3-day expo. We also host 9 conferences. As Ken mentioned, we have the EarthX Transportation Conference that will be held on the 26th of April. And the other conferences, 9 conferences, are focused on ocean, energy, resilient cities, the military, just a lot of different conferences. And then we also have a film festival. We have like over 90 screenings that we do, environmentally focused screenings and films from all over the country. And you can find out more at earthx.org. You can register for conferences there and just find out more detail. And we are curating and finalizing the details as we speak. So it's just a great event. It really is about connecting people together, nonprofits, government agencies, corporations, students, filmmakers, the public, with just a focus on creating a more sustainable future. Hello? Did I drop off?
I can hear you.
Okay, I'm sorry, that was it. Sorry about that.
Oh, I was on mute. I was asking you a question, Karen. Sorry about that.
Oh,
I was
sorry.
just saying. Sorry, folks. I was just singing the praises of the EarthX Expo. I was there last year. It's a fabulous, fabulous event. I think, Karen, how many people were there last year? Like 150,000 people?
137,000 last year. We expect to grow that to 160,000 this year. Really, we've been working over the last year to really grow from just an April event to a year-round engagement with people through our website, through a platform that we've developed called EarthX League, which really gets people more engaged year-round, and also just outside of Texas, more nationally and globally.
Yeah, so it's a fabulous event. So everybody should check out earthx.org. Everybody should go to Dallas and check it out. There's tons of exhibits, and there's an amazing, amongst other things, there's an amazing tiny house exhibit. So it's a great place to take families and kids, and it's a fabulous event. So thanks, Karen. We appreciate it. All right, now I'd like to introduce Nancy Luong from Dallas-Fort Worth Clean Cities Coalition, who is our partner in putting together today's webinar and also in carrying out our workshop at EarthX, which I'm going to talk a little bit more about in a minute. So Nancy, take it away.
Thanks, Ken. We are really excited to be here today and appreciate the opportunity to work with TAB. For those of you who don't know, Dallas-Fort Worth was one of the first regions to be designated as a Clean Cities Coalition in 1995. And for those unfamiliar with coalition missions, we work to advance affordability for businesses and consumers, we promote economic growth, and we also help maintain national security by promoting practices and decisions that improve air quality. Our primary focus is on the transportation sector in our region, where we work with public and private vehicle fleets to increase the use of alternative fuel vehicles, encourage use of telematics data, carpooling and other route optimization strategies, reducing idling, and saving fuel through other best practices. We do so by collaborating on informative webinars such as this one, promoting funding opportunities, and of course, uplifting our own stakeholders. In the 16-county region we service, we have over 1,200 propane and over 40 CNG school buses on the roads, and are currently interested in adding electric school buses to our regional portfolio. If there are any school districts within our region online who are interested in this technology, please get in touch with me. Our other efforts include working with multiple delivery sector organizations on their CNG fleet and showcasing the cities that are already using the auto reduction technologies for their fire trucks and ambulances. More information can always be found on our website at dfwcleancities.org. With that, I'll turn it back over to Ken. Thank you.
Ken, go ahead and keep yourself unmuted.
So thank you, Nancy. Appreciate it. So I want to briefly tell people about the workshop that we're doing in Dallas at EarthX Expo. We will be doing a half-day workshop in partnership with Dallas-Fort Worth Clean Cities. It's going to focus on 3 sectors: emergency response vehicles, school buses and other school vehicles, and shipping and delivery vehicles. And it'll be a half-day workshop, and some of the issues that we're going to talk briefly about today, we will go into much further depth various tools that are out there to do analysis over what kinds of alternative fuel vehicles are best for your fleets. And we'll hear from different manufacturers and different users about some of the challenges they've faced during their transition and how to overcome those challenges. So again, we hope that you will join us in Dallas. In the near coming days, we'll be sending out information on how to register for the Dallas workshop that's coming up. The other item I want to mention to folks, particularly those who are in Washington for the Energy Independence Summit, there's a lot of follow-up activity for Clean Cities coalitions and stakeholders to make sure we're doing everything possible to maximize federal funding for at least two important federal programs. One is the DOE Clean Cities program, and the other is the EPA diesel emission reduction grants. We've been successful in increasing funding for those two programs over the last 2 years. Clean Cities is now up to almost $38 million, when it used to be around $25 million a year. And the EPA diesel emission reduction grants were increased. Last year they were at $75 million, and this year they're up to $87 million. And they are, for those of you interested in replacing school buses and other diesel vehicles, the EPA diesel emission reduction grants are a great source of money for that purpose. So we'll be holding a webinar next Wednesday to talk about how you can help us implement our strategy to continue to fight for increased funding for those important programs. So that concludes our introductory period. And what I'd like to do now is to introduce our first guest speaker. His name is Frank Granados, and he's with the Rio Rico Medical and Fire District, and he's going to talk about their efforts to use biodiesel in their emergency response vehicles. So Frank, thanks for being here with us today, and take it away.
Thank you, Ken. We can go ahead and go to that next slide. So I'm down in Rio Rico. We're just about 50 miles south of Tucson, Arizona, about 8 miles north of the U.S.-Mexico border. And we had an issue in the past with the waste oil being dumped in the Santa Cruz River, which starts in Arizona, goes into Mexico, to Santa Cruz, Mexico, then comes back up through Arizona, one of the few rivers that run from south to north. And so what we did was we applied for a grant back in 2007, and there was a gentleman named Hans Huth who worked for Arizona Department of Environmental Quality, and he was able to help us to set up a biodiesel processing plant at Rio Rico Fire, and also one in Sonora, Mexico, at one of the universities down there. So we had the bomberos, the firefighters in Mexico, that were able to make the biodiesel and put it in their fire trucks, and then we did it here in Rio Rico. So basically with that grant, we had two different compounds built to make biodiesel and use it in first response, emergency response vehicles. Next slide, please. So as with most grants, you know, sustainability is an issue. When grant money starts to run out, we're asking ourselves, well, how do we continue this? And a lot of times these programs just fall to the side, and nothing ever happens with them again. We did some brainstorming. We got with Colleen Crowenshield out of Tucson Clean Cities. We said, look, we want to get this program going again. She helped us by making some signs. We started collecting after a Thanksgiving. Response from our community was overwhelming. And you can go to the next slide, please. These are the signs that we made, and basically it just says, hey, you know, help us out here. Drop off your used vegetable oil. And you know, and I know that if you're cooking in your kitchen, the last thing you want to do is get your oil and pour it into a tiny container and then drive X amount of miles to drop it off in a container at a fire station. We were amazed at the response we got from our community. For those of you that don't know, the first diesel engine that was ever made in that was presented at the World's Fair in the 1900s ran off peanut oil. So diesel engines were basically run off oil to begin with. We built some crude containers, and people were dropping off the waste vegetable oil from their homes to us, and we thought, wow, we got something going here. So we started processing more, and you can go to the next slide for us. And pretty soon we were getting totes and filling up our totes. These are 275-gallon totes that hold our oil. We've settled the oil in there. We can drain off the bottom to get the water out, and we have some pretty decent oil left over that we're going to use to make the biodiesel. Again, our community, and we're a relatively small community, but they still step forward to help us with our program. Next slide. They helped us so much that we started having a problem with how to store the oil. Now we're up to about 8 totes plus a 500-gallon container inside our bioprocessing room, and it was incredible. I mean, they're bringing us oil, and the sustainability part of where do we get our oil from is no longer an issue. So we're doing 2 things. We're receiving oil from our community, and we're also keeping this oil out of the landfills. We're keeping it out of the rivers, and we're putting it to use again. And people love driving behind us, smelling that biodiesel. Next slide, please. This right here is one of our 500-gallon storage tanks. So when our oil settles outside this room here, we pump it into the top of the tank, and we pretty much could run that in a vehicle that runs SVO, which is straight vegetable oil, which I run in some of my personal vehicles, where there's no chemical change made. You just run straight clean oil on your diesel engine. Pretty efficient. Does a great job. It's a better lubricant for injector pumps. Most of the vehicles out right now, we have a fleet of Mercedes-Benz Sprinters that can run a 5% blend of biodiesel. Our Dodge trucks can run a 20% blend of biodiesel. And then we have our bus trucks that can run even higher, and some we can even run on B100 complete biodiesel. Next slide, please. Pretty simple process. We work with what we have. We basically have water heaters that we use to heat up the oil. It separates the water from the oil, and moves through a processing. To the right there's some other cone-shaped barrels there. We transfer it in there. It gets mixed with methanol, some other chemicals, gets water washed, and we end up with B100, 100% biodiesel out of the oil that comes in those 20-ounce water jugs or 5-gallon jugs or coffee containers, whatever they bring it in, we use it. Next slide, please. So one of our firefighters, Mark Gruber, has a passion for the biodiesel, was doing it at his home on his own. And when I got here and he saw my truck running on B100 or on straight vegetable oil, he says, hey, let's get this biodiesel program going again. So I was, of course, on board with it. And there's a few steps. It's nothing that, like I said, it's not rocket science. It's just knowing the process and doing it. And Mark is really great about doing that. And all the chemicals that we use are available, through the stores up in Tucson, so we don't have an issue with any of that. Again, the money savings is great, and the air we breathe is a lot better than breathing that direct diesel fuel. Next slide, please.
I'm trying. There we go.
There you go. So here's one of our Ford 5500 ambulances. It has a Cummins in it. It's from the factory. It's allowed to run on B20, and so there's no issue with putting a blend of 2 gallons of biodiesel with 8 gallons of diesel to make a B20. Right now, I'll talk about them more at the end, but all our vehicles can run different blends of the biodiesel. Next slide, please. This is one of our wildland brush trucks. We see this truck more in California and Washington than we do in Arizona. because it's always, heading over to California and the Northwest coast to fight wildland fires every summer. But this truck here can run on B50. Depending on the engine, it depends on how much of the biodiesel fuel we can blend in to run these vehicles. Next slide, please. Here's a truck that we basically sold off some gas vehicles and purchased diesel vehicles. This one here can run on B100. So we average about a cost of about 80 to 90 cents a gallon to produce our biodiesel. So you look at 80 to 90 cents a gallon right now. Diesel's come down a bit. You can find it for around $3 a gallon right now. So we're shaving off quite a bit of dollars on filling up trucks. Next slide, please. Our first year, it was a $30,000 savings in fuel. And like I say, we're a small department, but we run a lot of miles on emergency calls and up the interstate from the Rio Rico area up to Tucson on transports, and it's a huge savings. Next slide, please. So again, it was about a 20% savings for us. And if you can figure 20% of a budget that's over $100,000 for fuel, you're talking some good dollars saved. Next slide. Our plan for 2019 is to be able to purchase a blender dispenser so that we can blend our fuel per unit we're going to be placing it into. We can put a B100 in, a B50, B20, B5, and not have to do anything but change a dial on a pump. Again, working off a small budget for maintenance down here, we need to save every dollar we can, and we're not just saving the air in our community, but we're keeping waste oils out of the washes, out of the toilets that run in the sewer system, out of the garbage that would go to the refuge center. We're doing a whole bunch by collecting the soil and then using it to our advantage to make the biodiesel fuel. So by the end of 19 here, we're hoping for all of our vehicles to run a certain blend of biodiesel. We were giving oil away, but then we got smart and we looked at tallow companies that were taking oil and selling it off to feedstock companies. And so now we're selling our overflow of oil to a tallow company to again bump our revenue to make extra income on the oil that we're collecting. We're over 300 gallons donated each month by our community restaurants. It's wonderful. And again, it's if you're sitting at the pump panel at a fire idling, it's a much nicer environment to breathe that biodiesel in than it would be to breathe in the straight diesel fuel. Next slide. So again, it works. Our relationship with our neighbors is wonderful. They keep pulling through. I've only seen a couple of people. I'm not sure. I think they drop off between midnight and 6 in the morning. I never see them, but we go there, and there it is. That our new bins are getting full again. So we appreciate our neighbors. What they're doing for us. It's not just in Rio Rico. We've had the Mexican firefighters bring up oil for us to use in containers. We're working on helping them to get their processing plant open again to help them to be able to produce the bio to make fuel for their fire trucks. And we're just creating a cleaner environment on both sides of the border right now. Next slide. Again, we actually made some new decals that go on our fire trucks that have the Maltese cross, like you see on the right there for the Rio Rico Medical and Fire, that are green, and they say, powered by our own biodiesel that we make. So pretty neat thing. It's a good program. We're happy with it. We get a lot of interest from it. We get a lot of phone calls after we do a webinar. We went to Long Beach a couple of years ago and presented there at Long Beach, and just a lot of interest in the biodiesel program. Again, it's better for the diesel engines to have a bio product in it because it lubricates them better, they run better, and they last longer. So it's a win-win-win for the fire departments, for the air, and for the community.
Thanks, Frank. That's an awesome project.
You're welcome, Ken.
Awesome. You guys are doing great things down there and really setting a model for the nation. I got one quick question for you, which is, have you considered also purchasing commercially produced biodiesel to supplement what you are producing, or maybe you don't even need it?
We do not need it. No, in fact, we're actually looking at possibly selling some of our biodiesel to other neighboring fire departments.
Gotcha. So you're in the supply business.
We're in the oil business. That's correct.
Yeah, that's right. That's great. Well, thanks again, Frank. We really appreciate it.
You're welcome, Ken.
I would now like to introduce Marcela Arispuro from the Amphitheater Public Schools in Tucson, Arizona, who's going to talk a little bit about what her school district has been doing with buses. So welcome, Marcela.
Thank you so much. Good afternoon, everyone. Greetings from cold Tucson. We're below 60 degrees and we're freezing. But I want to talk to you today about our propane buses. Go ahead and go to the next slide, please. Okay. One behind. One more so we can, I think we skipped one.
I knocked that one out. I'm sorry.
Oh, okay. You knocked that. Okay.
So I took out your agenda.
That's okay. That. So I want to give you a little bit of background regarding our school district. The district is located in Tucson, Arizona. It's approximately about 112 square miles. We have 21 school sites. Annually, we travel about 1.5 million miles. As far as how many students are enrolled in the district, that's about 14,500 on a daily basis. We transport 6,000 students. We have 376 routes. In the fleet size, we have 25 propane buses, 109 of them are diesel, and 3 of them are gas. Let's go ahead and go to the next slide. So why propane? The district had 2 objectives. They wanted to explore alternative fuel technology to generate clean energy and reduce fuel costs. Now, propane buses have been around since the 1970s. Some of the early adopters of this technology actually was begun in the state of Texas. And in 2014, the district decided to go ahead and buy propane buses. Before we move on to the next slide, I want to note 2 items. It takes time to build a bus. So by the time that you actually order the bus and delivery, it can be anywhere between 6 to 12 months. Additionally, the next thing that I want to note is I started my tenure with the school district in 2016. This is relevant information because we're going to transition into the challenges. Go ahead, the next slide. So here were the top challenges. Operators were very distrustful of new technology due to poor execution and implementation of a routing software. Additionally, the operators had very limited input when this shift happened, when the district chose to buy propane buses. As they started, when the buses showed up and the technology was started being used, they found out that it required operators to fill twice a day. Next slide. So the terrain in Tucson, it's not flat all the time. The elevation in the center is about 2,389 feet. In the northern part of the school district is 3,123 feet. That's about 750 feet. And a bus is going to behave very differently when you're driving on the flatland. I started my tenure with the district and they haven't had a good experience. Go ahead and go to the next slide. So in order to move forward, there were some crucial steps that needed to take place. I met with all the stakeholders and just listen, gather information. And during these meetings, I asked 2 questions. What type of buses do you want to operate? What type of buses do you want to work on? Because I'm not the one driving them. I'm not the one fixing them. Through this process, I was able to communicate objectives, the benefits of propane, and train personnel. And when it came time to go ahead and just buy more buses, I partnered with our vendors, our school bus vendors, and asked them, can you just bring a bus for a day or two, and it allowed all the stakeholders, mechanics, bus drivers, bus attendants, office staff, to look at the product, test the product, provide feedback one last time before they arrive here. Next slide. So this slide, I named it intent and impact, because the intent, if I'm going to recap our objective from the district, was to explore, alternative fuel technology to generate clean energy and reduce diesel fuel costs. By purchasing propane buses, they were minimizing the carbon footprint. And while I don't have all the cost savings, I can tell you that since I've been here, the price between diesel and propane is $1 a gallon. That can amount very quickly into savings. The interesting part was the impact of this objective. I noticed significant noise level difference between diesel and propane buses were being very beneficial to our special education students. I got parents and guardians asking me, why was this bus different than the other, that their students' educational day started off better when the student was on a propane bus. Additionally, it enhanced our relationship with our community members due to lower noise levels. The number of phone calls that I get about why is a bus stop at 6:30 in the morning stopping at my neighborhood have become less. So that's definitely a benefit. Next slide, please. Now, I want to focus on the environmental benefits. Propane is actually a non-spill fuel. The buses use a closed-loop fuel system, and it prevents fuel spills. The reduction of nitrogen oxide, known as NOx, is a compound found in vehicle tailpipe emissions that is toxic to humans. Every time that we replace a 2009 diesel bus, we're able to reduce over 1,000 pounds in particulate matter each year, and that's 10 pounds. That is amazing. Next slide, please. So just continuing with the benefits, it burns better than diesel. It's 20% less than nitrogen oxide, 60% less than carbon monoxide. The benefits just continue to go on. Next slide. And this is statistics that I wanted to share. Nearly 1 million kids in the United States ride to and from school in buses fueled by propane auto cars. So the technology is being utilized and is proven. Next slide, please. And I wanted to give you a recap of kind of like what are we doing next. One of the things that we're heavily researching is an electric bus. What are the pros? What are the cons? How can we sustain it? The second goal that we're looking into is the possibility of transitioning our white fleet to propane. And the last thing is we are looking always at alternative models to support our students' educational journey. That's my presentation. Thank you. And then these are the sources where some information can be found.
Great. Thanks so much, Marcela, and thank you for everything you're doing for the kids that you work with and the communities and parents that you work with. It's a tremendous job. I have a question. Can you say a little bit more about the benefits of the quiet of the buses for the special needs students?
Absolutely. So when we started utilizing the buses, our parents became very interested in as far as the students were not being upset as soon as they got out on the bus, or they were so sensitive that they started requesting more and more of those buses. So we actually seen less student management concerns as far as students misbehaving or not being ready to learn when they get to the school. So I've noticed it in terms of student management reporting. I've noticed it in terms of parents and guardians requesting buses, propane buses more, and just create, as well as administrators. So as
Great.
well as some of the buses that we have are smaller, so I can access areas that will not be able to be reached by bigger buses.
Got it. Great. Thanks again. We appreciate it. And I'd like to, I think, want to remind folks that if you do have questions, you can type them into the little question box on the side of your screen, and we'll take as many as we have time for. I also want to give a special shout out to Colleen Crownenshield from Tucson Clean Cities, who has done, has done a lot of work both with the folks in Rio Rico with the fire district, and also with Marcela and the amphitheater school district in Tucson. So thanks, Colleen, for your great work. And with that, I would like to now introduce Mike Sullivan. Mike is with Central Freight Lines. He's based in Fort Worth, Texas, and he's going to talk about his company's efforts to shift a number of their vehicles to compressed natural gas. So, Mike, thanks for being with us.
Hey, thank you very much. Just a couple of things. I would just like to thank everybody out there for joining and looking at sustainable transportation. That's something that we've kind of pioneered here at Central Freight. I just want to go into a little bit of Central Freight and what our fleet is doing in the market. So we were actually founded in Waco, Texas in 1925, and we're a privately held company. And our primary business is LTL, which is a less than truckload carrier. Next slide, please. So, and being a less than truckload carrier, we handle a variety of different types of transportations, mostly pallet by pallet, but we also do dedicated runs, full load trucks, and obviously we do some 3PL and handle a variety of different sectors of business, including hazardous chemicals, oil and gas, and just regular standard dry bulk freight. Next, third slide, please. We've got a coverage area of pretty much the southern half of the United States. We currently cover 20 states and have 80 terminals within that region. Next slide. So just a little bit about our fleet and our fleet dynamics. So we are a national fleet. We have 237 company-owned trucks. We also have, in addition to those, we have about 750 owner-operators that run for us. That's not including that 1237 on the tractors. About a little bit more than 8,500 trailers. Out of our entire fleet, we have 200 CNG trucks, and we have 3 fueling stations. As far as the majority, as far as the CNG fueling stations, we have a joint venture with 2 different CNG station builders. One being American Natural Gas, the other one, there's two of them there, 2 facilities there. Actually, they have the facility in Houston, Texas, and San Antonio, and then Evo CNG does our facility in Fort Worth, Texas. The majority of the units, the CNG units we have, are in the state of Texas, but we also do have a handful of units over in Oklahoma and Louisiana. But like I said, the majority, 90% of what we do is between what we call the triangle of Dallas, Fort Worth, Houston, and San Antonio. So out of all of my trucks, we have 170 P&D trucks, which that's a pickup and delivery. It's a smaller type of tractor. And we also run a few box trucks in that group. And we also have 30 line haul trucks. So those line haul trucks typically go from terminal to terminal and go about 250 miles max, and then turn around and deliver freight back and forth to our terminals. So the P&D portion of our operation is about 80% of our business. That line haul accounts for about 20% of our business. That does include a little bit of dedicated loads within that geographical area. So on the P&D trucks, we currently run M2 Freightliners with 9-liter engines. And we also, in our line haul trucks, we have Freightliner Cascadias with 12-liter engines. So next slide, please. So in regarding to just compressed natural gas, it's why CNG and why an alternative fuel? Why would we be a pioneer in doing this? So number one, it's cleaner than diesel or gasoline. One big advantage that we have found that there's no diesel exhaust fluid. There's not a second liquid that you have to put into the tank. As anybody that's running diesel out there knows, there's a lot of there can be a lot of problems regarding your DEF system, your exhaust system. They always, honestly, in some cases, especially the older units, tend to go down quite a bit. So there's no issue regarding your check engine light going off because of the exhaust issues, which is very common. The exhaust is a simple 3-way catalyst, just like you have in your exhaust system of your car, and we hardly ever have any issues with it. Also, it's a greener technology. So currently, natural gas has about 22% less greenhouse gases than what diesel does. Right now, we are evaluating units in California, Oklahoma, and Texas to look at renewable natural gas, which would be 100% on that, as far as sustainability and NOx emissions. And also, we have large customers out there like Lowe's and Home Depot and Walmart that have sustainability goals. And our goal at Central Freight is to partner with them to help promote their cleaner transportation and help the footprint of what they're trying to accomplish within their sustainability program. The other advantage is economic, and I kind of put together an economic model here on the next page, just kind of running through the two different types of tractors we have. So again, we've got a smaller unit which kind of goes around town, picks up merchandise and brings it back to the main terminal here, and then we have the 30 line haul tractors, which shuttle the merchandise back and forth to the various terminals. And obviously we're using less mileage on those P&D. They're going to sit in traffic a lot, but they use less mileage. The fuel economy is a little bit less on CNG than what it is on diesel, is what we're finding. But our overall cost, when you take a look at the cost in 2018, it was about $1. I buy it for about $1.50. Excuse me, I buy CNG for about $1.50 through my stations, and my diesel cost on average within this region is about $2.68 for the year. I kind of equated everything up, and our overall fuel savings on the P&D end was a little bit more than $1.1 million, and on the line haul end, again, we get better performance. It's a 12-liter engine. It's spec'd accordingly to get better fuel mileage. You're not stopping and going so much. Again, the same diesel cost, and we're getting a little bit more than $400,000 in savings there. So overall savings for 2018 is going to equate to a little bit more than $1.5 million. So that being said, you do have to look at a couple other ideas when you look at the economics of the unit. Is the unit does cost more for the engine and the fuel system, typically between $25,000 and $35,000 is what we're seeing, depending on the fuel size that you put on the truck. Our payback level at what you're seeing now is about 3.6 years on the incremental cost on the P&D tractor, and about 2.5 years on the line haul tractor. Something that you have to kind of throw out there. There are some funding available sometimes. In 2017, there was a 50-cent fuel credit that went towards the fuel, so that considerably increases or improves the economics. So much you're looking at a total cost savings for 2017 was about, on the P&D truck, about $10,000 per unit, which makes that payback about 30 months on the incremental cost. and on the line haul, it's about $20,000 savings, which you're looking at about 21 months regarding the incremental payback on that unit. Next slide, please. So that being said, we are a pioneer in the natural gas and sustainability. We've won a variety of different awards. It kind of started out with SmartWay back in 2011 when we got on board with that. And I just kind of put in here some of the purchases of our vehicles and how we are continuing to look at other alternatives is kind of where I want to go with this is we're slowly switching out of our propane fleet at this point more to electric in some areas like California. Right now we've got about 50 new forklifts slated for facilities in California at this point, so we're moving more that direction. But sustainability, and we're also looking at additional box trucks to include into our fleet this year in Texas, looking at Texas, Oklahoma, and California for those units. And also, I'd like to just kind of show some of the customers that we do business with here. The second to the last slide there. These are the folks that typically have sustainability projects that we try to be partner with them to try to reduce their carbon footprint. And that's all I have for today. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. That's awesome. Great work. I have a question. Sort of, how'd you guys get into this through SmartWay and learn about it, and what in the early stages, what motivated you to check out the CNG trucks?
It all started back in about 2012, 2013. I can honestly say we were trying to revitalize our fleet and kind of our business. This all really happened in Houston, Texas, with the start of pretty much that was kind of ground zero, other than California. In Texas, it was ground zero for some natural gas trucks. There was some natural gas infrastructure there initially. And that's what I would tell anybody. Don't jump into this thing. Don't jump into this thing full boat. I would definitely go a little bit at a time. So, we started off with 13 trucks in Houston using a public station. We proved out that the economics were pretty good. In those early days, the technology was getting started. The support was fairly good. So we did jump into getting more and more units. And obviously the price of fuel was a whole lot higher than it is right now. When you're looking at above $3 diesel, when you're looking at $3.50, $3 diesel, that economic payback gets really, really good. So that's kind of what got us into it, and kind of, the sustainability portion also, and trying to help our customers out with their sustainability programs. That kind of goes a long way. So helping customers, and then obviously helping our bottom line were the two major factors.
Great. And then I had one more question for you, which is, you mentioned that the 3 fueling stations that you have are all in Texas, and it sounds like most of your CNG trucks just stay in Texas. And I was wondering if that's correct, and if not, how do you deal with fueling when they're outside of the state?
So yes, it's how it works for you. So it's kind of like we're kind of like a refuse fleet. A refuse fleet's a back to base. The majority, that 80% of our business, is going to come back to base every night. So that's why the fueling stations are at that location. I do have state units at other locations, but there is public infrastructure that we draw from. But on these private stations, they're not private stations. Actually, the stations that we have, one of them is the Fort Worth station is a public station. They're all public stations, but I have time fill behind the gate on these stations also. So that's a very economical way for us to fuel, because our trucks sit there 12 hours a day and sit there and fuel at night, and are on the road during the day. So that's kind of, there's different types of station out there. We utilize both a time fill station and a fast fill station. at all 3 locations. So that's just kind of what's fit us, and we were, this was the area that we definitely, it's our biggest amount of business that we can sustain these trucks with.
Gotcha. This is a question for Marcela. The question is, have you been able to take advantage of any of the US EPA school bus rebate funds or any other financial assistance in the purchase of your propane school buses? Marcela, are you there? Are you with me?
Yes, sorry. I actually had a transportation emergency, so I do apologize. Can you repeat the question?
The question was, have you been able to take advantage of the US EPA school bus rebate funds or any other state or federal assistance to help you all purchase your propane school buses?
To my knowledge, yes. Prior to my tenure, they were able to had a grant to do the fueling station and helped purchase some of the buses. We are very fortunate right now that we have a bond and we are slowly replacing our fleet. So we've been able to do a combination of both.
Great. And then there was a question, half comment, and I'll turn it into a question also. This is for Frank, and the question is, one of our audience members, Colleen, actually pointed out that Nogales has some of the poorest air quality in the country, I believe, if not, at least in Arizona, if not the country, and was that one of the motivating factors in your efforts? And has what you've done, has it been able to, stimulate any other air quality improvements in your region at all?
Well, we've been able to stimulate the Nogales, Mexico firefighters. Again, we're being a border community. Their fuels, pass over here. So their cars that come here and their diesel trucks come here. So we've got a small foot in the door right now with the fire department as far as helping them with the bio program. And again, that comes back from 2007 from Hans Huth being able to get the plant grown over there. It's just it's hard. It's hard because the setting up the collection may sound easy, but we found a problem with getting it emptied out and not having a huge mess afterwards. And so we're developing now to say, we're going to come up with the oil Wednesday, whatever, to keep this process going. And again, we just sold 1,100 gallons of oil. We just had too much oil, so we just sold 1,100 gallons 2 weeks ago to help to mitigate the issue. But as far as the air quality goes, I mean, it'd be nice, and we'd be willing to assist in any way we can. But there's a lot of red tape on being able to do something like that.
Gotcha. And you have a lot of other sources of air pollution in all the trucks and cars in particular, going back and
Mexico, and they're running, the diesel generators on those units, running up and down through here. So I'm sure everybody across the country has that going on right now.
Got to get those to run on biodiesel, right?
Yeah, there you go.
So another question, this is for you, Frank, which is, are you able to blend regular used motor oil with your used, vegetable oil and waste oil from restaurants?
No, we're not. We have to use You can use hydrogenated oil, or we prefer vegetable oil because there's less water in it. But no, motor oil cannot be used. Now, if you look up SVO, straight vegetable oil, there's vehicles out there that can run on transmission fluid, on motor oil, on anything you can heat up so that they can get compressed and burned. But we do not use motor oil, or cannot use motor oil in our process.
In your process, gotcha. Okay.
Right. What we're looking at now actually is being able to use people do drop off motor oil sometimes, and so instead of making it a problem for us, we're thinking about maybe purchasing an oil burner to heat some of our apparatus bays to warm them up instead of having to pay for fluids or gases. We're going to use what people are dropping off to us to burn and heat up our large apparatus spaces.
Right. Great. So I'm going to pose this one last question to all of our panelists today, and I'll start with Marcela. And the question is, what's one word of advice, or more than one word? What's one piece of advice that you would give to, in your case, Marcela, a fellow school district leader who wants to explore, new transportation fueling technologies?
I would say two things, and that's communication and patience. The more that you communicate with all stakeholders, the reason and how it's beneficial to the environment, the cost savings, and our special needs students, and how whatever objective or goal you have, and once you do that, it sets a stage. And then from my experience, people are okay with change. It is a transition that takes time. So understanding that any transition that you're gonna embark upon will take time to see the buy-in, the benefits in as we move forward. So the benefits definitely outweigh the cost, but I would say just be patient and communicate.
Great. And Frank, same question for you.
We have been approached by other departments across the country. They saw us on Motor Week years back, and so we get a couple of phone calls a year asking us, how we did it. And so we send them a little, email saying this is what you need to do. First of all, you need to get your oil source, and if you can keep it out of the landfill and keep it out of the sewer system, it's there. We're proving that it's able to be done. Colleen does a good job organizing large oil collections up in Tucson after Thanksgiving. It's just getting people to buy in. So, it's not hard. It's, when you're making fuel for 80 cents a gallon, it's got to say something there. And it's good for our trucks. It's good for the community, and it's good for the landfills and sewer systems. So it's a win-win all the way around. It's just, it's that first step, and we're willing to talk to anybody to help them, get a program started and be able to be successful in doing so.
That's great. Thanks, Frank. And Mike, before you take that last concluding question, I have one other question for you, Mike.
Okay.
Which is a question from one of our audience participants is, how do you think the introduction over time of electric tractor, trailer trucks will impact your operations, and in particular those that run shorter routes?
I think it's very viable, especially on that smaller. See, we also run a bunch of Sprinter vans, so we do have even a smaller application. So that would be a terrific application immediately for electric that we are looking at right now. It's one of those things on that class. I'm talking about Class 8 trucks here. We'll have to see. Again, I'm going to make sure that the economics make sense first before I do anything, and I'm going to start. I'm going to start a little bit at a time. I'm not going to jump all in, just so I can understand the technology. But I think it's very, very viable as far as electric, and especially on that around town smaller routes that we have that typically come back 2 to 3 times a day and have 20 different stops on it. So it's a very good application.
That's great. And you get the final word of advice to other truckers out there who want to look at this stuff.
Okay. Well, I kind of killed 2 birds with 1 stone on that last question.
You did.
I did. So make sure that you spec your units properly. Make sure to get a warranty, because if you don't have folks that know the technology and how to work on it, it can be very costly. So definitely get warranty on that. I would suggest. And also, again, like I said, start slow and understand the technology before jumping in full bore.
That's great. So in conclusion, first of all, I just want to thank all of our panelists today. You all did a great job. You're doing great things in your community for the people, for the environment, for your organizations and businesses to save money, and it's very impressive what all of you are doing. So thank you for participating today, sharing, and for your great work. We will have the slides up on the website, which will include everybody's email if you want to reach them. And again, I want to encourage people to check out earthx.org, and we'll be sending you information on how to register for our workshop in Dallas on April 26th. So thanks everybody for participating. Thanks again to Mike, Frank, and Marcela. We really appreciate your time. And have a great day, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.